My name is Karadoğan, and I'm one of the founders of Turkey Mozaik Foundation. Now, we've prepared an exciting hour for you all this evening with two very special guests. But before we begin, let me remind you that if you have children at home that may be interested in the environment, now you can ask them to do screen time. Yes, if they are reading a book or they're doing homework, feel free to invite them to do more screen time tonight, as this will be worth it. And likewise, if you are the child, and if you have parents at home that are still using a ton of single-use plastic or eating loads of red meat or something, and it's driving you crazy, children, this is the moment. You should ask them to stop WhatsApping each other and join you on screen for the next hour. By the way, this is a recorded event, so you've all been muted. Thank you for that. And if you have a problem being recorded, if you want to turn off your camera, it's up to you. And in the meantime, if you could keep yourselves on mute, that would be appreciated. Please raise your hand virtually or type in the chat box if you have any questions along the way, and we'll be checking those. Now, for those of you not familiar, Turkey Mozaik Foundation, we founded about 3 years ago. We are a UK-registered charity. We aim to support charitable organizations and civil society in Turkey. And since our founding, we have supported dozens of local charities by extending grants touching 350,000 British pounds, thanks to the generous support of our founders and donors such as yourselves. So thank you very much. We focus on topics such as children, gender equality, culture and the arts, and the environment. And we mainly tackle these areas with thematic funds, for which we select local applicants working in that particular area. And this is a particularly exciting period for us, as we have supported environmental organizations individually before as Mozaik, but we're about to launch our first environmental sustainability fund, focused on digital transformation, with our partners Sivil Toplum İçin Destek Vakfı, with whom we've been working together on similar funds since our founding, and also with the EBRD, with whom it's the first time we're launching a fund together. Greetings to all our friends dialed into this event from Destek and from the EBRD, and here's to many more funds together and projects together with them. Now, before I introduce our first guest of the evening and pass on the Zoom microphone, I want to mention a quote from the best fiction book that I read in 2020, and I want to give you a challenge. If you are passionate about trees, this is a crazy novel called The Overstory by Richard Powers. Now, the book refers to a Chinese saying, a Chinese conversation. They ask a man, when is the best time to plant a tree? Now, let's see if you can use the chat function. Just type away an answer. When is the best time to plant a tree? Let's see what we get back from the audience. All right. All right. Very good. I like the way you're thinking. Exactly. Okay. I think we've got the themes of what I'm about to say. Well done. Let me continue with what the Chinese say in the book. The answer the Chinese give is 20 years ago. And then they ask, when is the next best time? And the answer is now. And in fact, looking at the answers, pretty much you got both themes covered in your answer. So well done, everybody. Now, I've been in London for just over 20 years, and I regret that I did not get a chance to plant a tree back when I first arrived. But you children have an opportunity to do this now. So my challenge to you for 2021 is to plant a tree. Whether it's in your garden or patio or balcony or indoors in a pot, your challenge is to plant a tree and take good care of it for the next 20 years. Our planet is being destroyed in front of our very eyes, and you children had nothing to do with it. But I'm sure you don't want to be the last generation to see, say, an elephant in the wild. And I love the fact that you're here with us tonight. Now, you are the David Attenborough generation, and you are so lucky to have that colossal figure of inspiration in your lives, especially those of you here in the UK. One of my favorite quotes involving Attenborough is when they ask him, when exactly did you develop your love of nature? His response is amazing. He asks back, when did you lose yours? Children grow up with animals and with nature. Your first drawings were probably animals and birds and trees. And remember, your first toys were probably all animals. Now, this brings me to our first guest of the evening, someone who's never lost his love of nature and animals since he was a child. And I know that for a fact because I've known him all my life and since he was 3. And that's because he is my brother, Barış Karadoğan. Now, Barış will talk about birds and his birding expeditions, some of them with Çağan Şekercioğlu from Kuzey Doğa Association, one of our prior grantees. Barış is also one of 3 people I know who has actually been to Papua New Guinea. It is 10 a.m. in California, but he tells me he's already had his coffee. So without further ado, Barış, over to you.
Hello, guys. Let me share my screen here. Hope you guys can hear me. There we go. It's wonderful to be here. I've made many such presentations in my life, but I don't think I've ever made one where my brother, my father, my uncle, my 2 nephews, my sister-in-law, and my daughter was in the audience, along with some of my best friends. So it makes it extra exciting. I'm very happy for Mozaik to invite me here. And I'm here to talk to you guys about my passion of nature and especially birds. So who am I? You guys may know me as a Silicon Valley tech person, but I'm a naturalist as well. I love nature. And most of that is thanks to my dad, who's a scientist and always encouraged me to be in nature. But a wonderful thing happened. I watched David Attenborough's Life on Earth in 1979 on a iGuz brand black and white TV. I even remember the episode I watched and I was hooked. That was it for me. I fell in love with nature and biology, and everything around it has been my life ever since. As they say, the rest is history. 42 years later, I've been involved with the California Audubon Society. We preserve the environment for birds. I'm involved with the Richard Dawkins Foundation of Reason and Science. Richard's a good friend. We help teach science. And most importantly, I'm a birder. So you guys may ask, so what's a birder? Well, this is what...
Barış, we also have a hand up from Simla Atalay. Simla, would you like to ask a question?
I was just gonna ask, did you just focus on birds, or did you focus on birds, or did you experience with any other animals?
The excuse is to seek birds, but you stop for every animal out there. As a matter of fact, if you see a mammal, a bear, or a giraffe, those are even more important than birds. So yes, the excuse is to follow birds into the jungle, but you stop at anything interesting, from worms to bigger animals. So yes, birding is the excuse to go there, but experiencing nature in its fullest is the real goal. And this is what birders do. We usually have a vehicle. We carry our binoculars everywhere. You can recognize Çağan in the photo there. This was in Papua New Guinea. We always carry a field guide because it's hard to identify birds. And I think of birding is a cross between hunting and stamp collecting. Because just like a hunter, you have to stalk what you're looking for. You listen to its sounds. You sometimes watch their tracks on the ground. You have to jump into the jungle. There's mosquitoes, chiggers, leeches all over you. But then when you finally find that magnificent animal, you take a photo and voila, the specimen joins your stamp collection. And that's why it's a little bit between hunting and stamp collecting. And once you get all your observations, you upload them to a global database called EBRD, which our next guest, Uygar, has a lot to talk about, is an expert on. And I'll leave that to him. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. So when you're a birder, you go where birds are. Sometimes you're on top of a bus, sometimes you're on the top of the Himalayas, and you're pretty much everywhere. And I want to talk about this particular place called the Manu National Park in Peru. I was there a few years ago, and it's possibly the world's most interesting birding spot. Why? Because the national park starts at the top of the Andes. When you start, you can barely breathe up there. And then you go down all the way to the Amazon basin. But what makes it amazing is that altitude determines habitat, and habitat determines what kind of birds are there. So every 15 minutes, half an hour you walk down, you see completely different animals, completely different birds. And just to put things in perspective, in the Manu National Park, people have seen 1,000 different birds. To put that again, in North America, there are 1,000 different birds. In Turkey, it's around 500. So this is one of the most amazing places to go birding, and it's a magnificent experience. So you go where the birds are. And talking about our stamp collection, here are some of the most amazing birds I've seen. This was in Uganda. This is a shoebill. This bird I first saw in David Attenborough's Life on Earth when I was 7 years old. And all my life I've wondered, will I ever see one? And it was 2018 when it happened. And this next one is the monal, which is a beautiful pheasant in Bhutan. So we talked about EBRD for a second. So what is EBRD? EBRD is Cornell University's bird database. And again, Uygar knows a lot more about it, but here's what it is. There are 10,000 species of birds observed globally. Now, some are very hard to see. Some haven't been seen in 50 years. Some are extinct. But there's 650,000 birders that upload data to EBRD, which makes it one of the most amazing citizen science events of the world. The researchers use this data from individuals. And just to put things in perspective, the number one ranked person has seen 9,284 birds. Our own very own Chan is number 5 in the world with 8,000 species. And it's a bit of an obsession. People go crazy about it. But it's a great way to walk the earth. You just walk and let nature sink in, and you just enjoy it most importantly. I personally am at 2,300 species, and my life goal is 6,000 by the age of 60, 7,000 by 70, and 4,000. And you can see what an obsession this is. So I get this question a lot. Why birding? Why birds? Why not beetling or monkeying? Can't you find another animal to follow? To answer to that is yes, there are people who are obsessed with that. There are some people who love to collect insects and do other stuff. But let's take monkeys, for example. There's 260 species of them. Great. You can spend 2 or 3 summers in Africa and South America, and you've covered them all. But they're also, you don't find monkeys in Pacific Islands. You don't find them in Antarctica. You don't find them in many other places. What about beetling? Well, good luck with that. There's 350,000 species of beetles. You have to dig your chin to the ground. It's hard to identify. God knows what they are. It's hard to find them at night, so it's very difficult. Now, just want to make a point on beetles, though. Beetles are the most numerous animal in the world, unique species-wise. Ants, there's 100,000 species of ants. So why beetles? Why are beetles so successful? Because their design is a remarkably evolutionarily successful design. Insects have 2 pairs of wings. Beetles, one of the pairs of wings have become a protective shield around them. As a matter of fact, the Turkish word for beetle is kın kanat, which means sheath wing, which means one wing protects the other. This way, beetles can be foraging animals, because when you forage, your wings could be damaged, but your shield protects it, and you can still fly. And that what makes them one of the most successful species on the world. Why birding? Because birds fly. They can get to you without fear. You can be looking at a tree. On the top of the tree, the bird can be looking there completely safe from you. As you guys have known, the way we've been treating the planet, every other animal has very well learned to run away when they see humans as fast as they can. Not birds, because they know they're kind of safe from you guys. So that makes it more interesting. It's easy to find them, and there's just the right amount, 10,000 of them out there. Again, birds are everywhere. They can be found in remote islands in the Pacific. There's a bird, I'm going to show you the picture in a second, that breeds near the South Pole in Antarctica. And Arctic terns migrate from the Arctic all the way to Antarctica. There are nocturnal birds, pelagic birds that are always like albatrosses that are always in the air in the oceans. There are crepuscular birds that are only active when the sun is either coming up or down, riparian birds. There's giant birds like ostriches, and there are tiny birds like hummingbirds. And this is the snow petrel. This bird is the most southerly breeding bird, and it breeds in the Mount Erebus in Antarctica. And the Arctic tern, I have you guys here, this is what the bird does every year. And we're going to get to it. There's a little point in California you can see there that touches that. We're going to get to that in a second. But this is what makes birds so amazing. So why are birds important for the environment? Well, look at this sword-billed hummingbird. They are very delicate and very die easily. Why? Because birds are superbly optimized for flight. Flight is such an important evolutionary advantage that everything is geared towards it. They have to be light, and that's what makes them very fragile. You guys have all seen the benefits of flight. You guys have all watched nature documentaries. You see a predator lurking a bird, it jumps and the bird just flies off the branch. And then all of a sudden that predator has this stupefied face that says, what just happened? Well, that's the advantage of being able to fly. The price of being able to fly is that you're very delicate. So birds are really the canary in the coal mine of the whole planet. If they disappear, it's a really bad sign for humans. Like they say in the Audubon Society, if it's good for bird, it's good for people. And take a look at this sword-billed hummingbird. This is the only bird with its beak longer than its body. Only animal, actually. And yes, kids, this is not a nose. This bird is not a liar. Its nose has not grown. It's its mouth. Moving on. So let's talk about the environment, because you guys are all interested in the environment. I want to talk about the very sad story of the passenger pigeon. This bird is a native of North America. It only lives in the prairie lands, the Great Plains of North America, and it's currently extinct. It was the most numerous bird in the world. There were 5 billion of them. Currently today, the next numerous bird is 2 billion. It's the red-billed qualia in Africa. But this passenger pigeon, there are stories that when they flew, they would darken the sky. It would become like night. There were so many of them. So why were they so successful? Because they had a breeding method that was very successful. They're what's known as a colonial breeder. That means they put all their nests in one area. So in one region, you may have 10 million, 20 million birds. Now, I'll let you guys think, why is that evolutionarily good? It's good because it overwhelms the predators. Maybe there's a family of foxes there. Maybe there's a bunch of hawks. Let's say they eat 2 birds a day, 5 birds a day. And in the course of the 90 days of fledgling a bird, okay, a couple hundred birds are eaten, a couple thousand birds are eaten. What is it over 10 million? So it's a phenomenal strategy. Obviously, the hawks and foxes don't have WhatsApp and Snapchat and Twitter that say, hey, here are all the birds, get over here. It does not happen. It's a wonderful strategy, and it's been working for hundreds of millions of years, except putting all your nests in one area. That's a funny term. Putting all your nests in one area is a terrible strategy against a predator with a bulldozer, or a predator that can hunt in scale. So this bird, from being the most successful bird in the world, they became extinct in 50 years because of humans hunting them. When all the nests are in one area, very easy. You burn it all and they're all gone. You can kill millions of birds in one shot. And very sad story, this bird is now gone. It shows you how quickly we can make such a big and negative impact on the environment. Now, next slide. I'm involved with the Audubon Society, and there's the tricolored blackbird that you see here. And by the way, here's a test of awareness for you. How many birds do you see? If you see only one, you're drunk and you're overcompensating. But there's actually 5 birds there. See if you can see all 5. But this is our last colonial nesting bird in America. And at the Audubon Society, they live in California, and we take great care in protecting them. First, we raise awareness of this breeding habit. Then we create urgency about why there's so few of them left. And believe it or not, we give incentives. Audubon has people driving up and down the Central Valley of California and trying to find where they're going to put their nests. And if they do it in a dairy farm or something, we tell the farmer to delay harvest as long as possible so the birds fledge. Or sometimes we have even paid a farmer to just not touch their crop so that these birds can go. But there's about 150,000 of them left, and when they nest, they cover an area of 50,000 birds. So in one shot, 1/3 of the population could be destroyed. And I've seen these. I've seen one rookery of 50,000 of these, and it's an incredible sight. There's birds everywhere. There's noise, and it's a big nature event. But these are the kind of things you can do if you try to protect the nature. And I'm putting this example of what it does work.
Barış, I got a question on the chat from Ada Onur. Have you ever seen a bird of paradise doing a mating dance, or a bower of a bowerbird?
Yes and yes. In Papua New Guinea, I've seen the dance of the greater bird of paradise, the king bird of paradise. I've seen them. And I have not only seen, but photographed a flame bowerbird. And it's actually my most precious photograph. And I actually have a picture of it coming up. So very, very good question. So what do I see here? This is the Salton Sea. This is a landlocked ocean in California, and it's shrinking. This tree, this is a picture I found off the internet, but the actual tree I saw was very similar. If you notice, there's a nest, there's a bunch of nests on these trees. And these nests are egret nests. And birders know that egrets make their nest by the water. So a few years ago, there was actually water here, and now it's all gone. And in this area, Salton Sea used to be a big vacation resort for Californians. Now, because of all the dust that comes up with the water receding, the childhood asthma rates are 3 times the national average. The economy is devastated. If you go see, you see boarded up houses, and the place is absolutely miserable. We are trying to raise money to protect at least parts of the sea so that some birds can rest in their migration. And remember the Arctic tern I showed you guys that go from the Arctic all the way down to Antarctica? They actually stop by the Salton Sea. And at that latitude, the Salton Sea is the only place they stop. In the technology world, we call that a single point of failure. So if the Salton Sea goes, those migration patterns may be severely destroyed. You see how one little ocean affects the entire globally the behavior of birds. And that's the awareness I want to give you guys, and my admiration of you guys starting this fund. So I just have a few final thoughts, and somebody asked about a bowerbird. Here it is. I have seen this bird in flight and perched. I never got it this close. There's also 2 birds in this picture. There's a female in the back. First of all, thank you, Turkey Mozaik Foundation, for embarking on this wonderful journey. I just want to let you guys know, help and know-how is available. I consider myself very much a friend of you guys, and all the stuff I've learned from Audubon will be available to you. And here's what I also want to leave. Birds unite us in an increasingly divisive bird. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, everybody wants to see their grandchildren hear the sound of a loon or a bird. So they unite around it. And that is actually one of the powers of the environment. It brings everybody together. Thank you very much. At this point, I'll stop the share.
Excellent. And Barış, there's one other question. What was the most fascinating bird you ever encountered? The question is from Ayşe.
Most fascinating bird I've encountered was the shoebill I showed you guys in the photo. Because all my life I've been dreaming of seeing it, and it is a monotypical bird. A monotypical bird means it's the only one of its kind. Like pigeons, there's 50, 100 different kinds of pigeons, but shoebill, that's why its name is only one word, is alone. It's almost like between a dinosaur and a bird. You saw the photo, it's a majestic thing. It's giant, it doesn't even like to fly. It's one of the biggest flying birds. And just the presence it's had in the swamp, when it raises its head, you really feel like you've gone in a time machine to a prehistoric time.
Brilliant. That question was from Efe, apparently. I want to correct that. Right. There's someone not on mute. Thank you very much. Right. We will come back to Barış. Let's keep the pace up. Thank you very much for covering this extra topic, Abi. I hope our guests are inspired to go and explore the fascinating diversity nature provides us. And by the way, you don't need to go to Papua New Guinea. Just take a walk in Hyde Park tomorrow if you're in London, or Belgrade Ormanı if you're in Istanbul. And if only you look up, you will notice birds are everywhere and they are disappearing fast. So catch them while you can. And obviously, make sure you have your phone so you can start to record them on eBird. Now, we've spoken about the enthusiasm nature and birds can generate. So let's change gears now and talk about what activists and civil society can do to protect nature so future generations can continue to enjoy the wonderful creatures Barış spoke about, but also for the health of our planet and its biodiversity. Now, we're lucky within the Mozaik team to have a sustainability expert, our very own Ergem Şenyuva Tohumcu, who is the founder of Yeşilist.com. And I'd like to now pass it over to her and to our very special guest, Uygar Özesmi, who has dedicated his life to nature conservation, sustainability, and ecological and social justice. And then we'll have Barış and Uygar back on again afterwards. So Ergem, over to you.
Thank you, Yalın, for the introduction. Barış, thank you very much. What a colorful, engaging presentation, and thank you. I think you've left us with, not only birds, but also of what we as humans are doing to the planet. So we're moving from one bird enthusiast to the other, which is Uygar, Doçent Doktor Uygar Özesmi. So Uygar is actually an old friend, and I've known for many years now. And I must say he's one of the most important people in Turkey in terms of environmental domain, and actually not in Turkey, also globally, I must say. And I think what distinguishes him from many other people in this domain is he has been on the research and conservation side, but he's also very innovative. Today he's actually an entrepreneur. He's always curious and finding innovative ways to transform society. His last endeavor, which we will also talk about, is about how we consume and about transforming our consumption culture. So today I'm honored to have you here with us, Uygar. Uygar is an Ashoka Senior Fellow. He's a founder and instigator of Good for Trust organization. And as Yalın said, he's dedicated his life to this cause. So Uygar, I think as a bird enthusiast, I think my first question is when, I would like to take you back to your childhood. Maybe you can share us about what happened when you were a little boy and you're, becoming interested in bird conservation.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting listening to Barış, a fellow birder who has the same passion for nature and birds. Similarly to him, actually, I got to be fascinated by nature looking at an encyclopedia. It was by Bernhard Chimek. Professor Bernhard Chimek is a famous German researcher who has done much research on the Serengeti in the Serengeti National Park. He's actually the person who created the Serengeti National Park, and his grave, together with his son, Michael, is at the rim of Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania, which is by itself a miracle. So anyway, so I was reading his book when I was a kid, and I got fascinated with nature. And when I came back from Germany to Turkey, I was at the age of 9 or so. I learned that there was a place called a bird paradise in Kayseri, in the middle of Anatolia. My parents were professors. They were at Erciyes University. And I begged them that they should take me there. So we went there to Sultan Marshes. And it was in the middle of the winter. The reeds were coming out of the ice like golden rods. And as a kid, I would just like skid on those ice surfaces crazily. I mean, it was the most fun thing to do. It was just like skating, skating on ice in this marsh. But I also encountered a very sad story. There were these birds, which you might have seen in the parks. It's called in English the kut. In Turkish, it's called sakarmeke because of its white sort of front. It's a black bird with very delicate and interesting sort of lobular hands, so it can walk easily on muddy areas and not sink. So like really big feet. And they were dying. They were dying in the hundreds and thousands. Apparently, they had a disease which was called botulism. And because of that, they were dying. So I was like so sad. I wanted to save one. And I convinced my parents to take one of them together with us. And we took it home. My father, being a doctor, tried to treat it and so forth. But unfortunately, it died in my hands. But I just absolutely fell in love with those beautiful black pearl-like eyes. And then I asked my parents to go back again as well, but Turkey at those times was quite poor. I couldn't even get binoculars in Kayseri. So they got me some binoculars, like heavy binoculars, Russian binoculars, which were very heavy for me to carry and to lift. And I started bird watching with those in Sultan Marshes. And at the time, we didn't have these beautiful bird guides that Barış showed you. We had a book by Belkıs Balpınar and his husband, who's a famous Salih Acar, who's a famous bird painter as well. So Salih Acar and Belkıs Balpınar's book, which was called Kuşlarımız, Our Birds. It only had silhouettes. No pictures, just silhouettes. So I would like open this blue and white book, look at the bird silhouettes, look with the binoculars, like almost so heavy I could hardly lift them, and try to identify those birds. It was a nightmare. But luckily, one day, after a few months, I was watching birds. Sancar Barış, Can Bilgin, and Reşit Akçakaya, the young ornithologists of Turkey. They were actually there was only Tansu Gürpınar before that. Then there was another person, and then were these three guys. So luckily in Sultan Marshes, I get to meet one of the three of the five birders in Turkey. What did they do? They gave me a real bird guide. Now that was something. I could actually now identify those birds. And since then, I'm a bird watcher. That's my story.
Thank you, Uygar. But it doesn't also finish there. It actually, you also are one of the youngest people who've written, who did a research on this. And maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that journey, and then your and following that, maybe you can give us some idea about, you know, how that put you in the environmental heart of environmental movement in Turkey.
Right. I mean, when you get to know birds and you start studying birds, it's a really it's something that brings you into nature. You start being curious about everything else. So birds were feeding in the water, right? So they're in the water, marshland birds, and they're eating something out of the water. So I was like curious, what the hell are they eating? So what I did is I took a water sample and I put that water sample under the microscope. And when I looked at it, oh my God, boom. It was like all the diversity that I was seeing around me in this marsh was there in that drop of water. There's like all these planktons and diatoms and rotifers and you name it. I mean, like, it's a huge other world in there in that little drop of water. It's amazing. So I started looking at all of these different planktons and plankton species, started identifying them. I started working with a few professors at Ankara University. They helped me in identifying them and so forth. They gave me like books and I had to read them and look, and that's why I got glasses now, although I'm not using them anymore because I guess I'm old and I see better close up. So anyway, so I started looking at these planktons and I was so fascinated, I turned it into a research project. So I was looking at their differences based on season, depth, and so forth, many different variables. And then I started writing a project about it to TÜBİTAK at the time, the Turkish Scientific and Technical Research Council. And they had a competition. I, got into that competition. I got an award, and finally I turned it into an article, and it was published when I was 17 years old in a scientific journal. So that was kind of like a, what you would say like, whoa, that was cool. And then I started after planktons. I saw while I was collecting all these planktons, the Coleoptera, the kınkanatlılar, right? That the beetles that Barış was talking about. There are beetles in the water. It's amazing. They're swimming in the water. They have abdomens. They're like these abdomens. They're the feet. They are like little ruders. They can actually use them. Like you will have flippers, and they go in the water and they hunt in the water. They even have a larvae form of those beetles, which actually eats tadpoles and fish. And then the larvae turns into this beetle. So I started studying beetles, and also another group, which is called Heteroptera, which is yarım kanatlılar. They have a different kind of wing structure. And interestingly, because nobody studied them, I found like 6 new species for Turkey because nobody else was looking at them. I again worked with some research institutes, this time in Germany, fantastic guy, professor called Nico Nieser, who helped me out with the identification of the really difficult ones. And then I wrote another paper. And then being so much into nature and interested in nature, I ended up working with DHKD, Doğal Hayat Koruma Derneği at the time. And I ended up trying to protect what I loved, because I have seen through that process that they were disappearing day by day, unfortunately, and still today.
Thank you. I'll actually almost move to today, jump forward and ask you, actually, another hat that you're wearing is also you're the executive director of Change.org in Turkey. Change.org is a platform for those of you who may not be familiar. Change.org is an online platform where people can petition for anything, any cause that they feel passionate about. And I actually would like to ask you, what's the role of that how does Turkish society responded to that in terms of behavior change, in terms of petitions for the environment and all the social causes?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, Change.org is essentially a petition platform. The story, the way I came to Change.org is quite interesting, because it dates back to EBRD. When the EBRD, the database that Barış was talking about, is what we call citizen science. But citizen science is also what we know as crowdsourcing. So you're actually crowdsourcing the data from all of those hundreds and thousands of birders all around the world, which put in their data into the centralized database system. So while trying to protect birds, I wanted to build a database in Turkey that would allow for all the bird watchers to input their data. So at the time we called it Kuşbank, so bird bank. So you would put bird data in, it would be like all these bird watchers who would put in their data. And wow, since we had like 3,000 bird watchers at the time, immediately we had so much data, much more than we had before, collected together. So it was like a few thousand bird watchers had essentially created so much information about birds that it was like amazing. So I took the idea, I went to Royal Society for the Protection of Birds in UK. You probably know about them, RSPB. So if you are not a member, please become a member. It's probably one of the best organizations that you can be part of. And I know Yalın is probably already, right? So RSPB, I pitched the idea to them and I said, look, why don't you do this database? And they took it. They then further developed it, and we created World Birds. And World Birds became like sort of the citizen science project of the world. At the same time, the Americans at Cornell University and Patuxent Wildlife Center were also working on it, and they created eBirds. But afterwards, I didn't have any time anymore. I gave over Kuşbank to Kerem Ali Boyla. And Kerem Ali Boyla, you might know him as well. He's a great bird watcher. He's one of the best bird watchers out there in Turkey. Barış, I'm sure, knows him or met him before. He's the one who then took Kuşbank further. And finally, Kuşbank and World Birds is merged with eBird. And we have this global database finally. So essentially, the reason why we have this global database is because in some remote university in Turkey, we started Kuşbank project. And thanks to that, it became a global thing. Of course, with eBird, the Americans as well, but it sort of like grew together. And that's the beauty of it. But what I discovered there, Ergem, is that crowdsourcing is the key. When people come together, they have power to change things. So when we come together, we can do things. And that's why I started at Tema Foundation first, and then at Greenpeace, signature campaigns. So we would build like pages where we would start collecting signatures from people for an environmental cause. And we stopped many things, both at Tema Foundation and at Greenpeace as well. And then one day I thought to myself, what if we don't crowdsource the signatures, but we crowdsource the campaigns, which then crowdsource the signatures? And that's exactly what happened. So then I started looking, I found Change.org, which was doing this, and they had an intent to come to Turkey. So I approached them, I said, come on, we have to start it in Turkey. We started it, and guess what? Which was our biggest campaign when we started? Do you remember that? Yes. It was Ergam's campaign with Yeşilist, where she collected 60,000 signatures against development in Maslak, where they were essentially destroying a forest. And you know what? She succeeded. She won. So basically, Change.org is successful because it has courageous people who start campaigns, and there are courageous people who support those campaigns, becomes a movement, and change happens. It's all about crowds, people coming together. It's about people power.
Thank you, Uygar.
Whether birds or whether environmental causes or social causes.
Exactly. And then in addition to that, I think, which brings me to Good for Trust, because you know, I would love to ask you about this Good for Trust, especially because it's about a new way of consumption. Because as Barış said, we've seen what should be a lake, which is completely desertification. We hear about climate change. We know there are, you know, all these problems in the horizon. And most of it has something to do with the way we consume. So you're trying to change that. So how is that happening?
Well, yeah, interestingly, it's still the same idea, you know. We are seeing that the economy is, people think, you know, there's climate change, there's biodiversity crisis. It's a huge problem. It's not a problem. It's a symptom. It's a result of something else what we do. And something else that what we do is essentially consumption. Consumption is also the word for tuberculosis, by the way. The English word for tuberculosis is called consumption. Verem in Turkish. So consumption is the problem. It's our economic system that is the problem. It's our economic system that is causing climate change and biodiversity crisis and all of that. So we need to change the economy. So how do we change the economy? People power. We need to bring people together to actually change the economy. So what we are envisioning is a new kind of economy, which is like the Amazon forest. The Amazon forest has been on this planet for 55 million years. In those 55 million years, the Amazon forest hasn't harmed the least bit our planet. It has only helped our planet. And in those 55 million years, it has developed an incredible biodiversity. I mean, Barış will contest to that. He's been there. The amount of species of birds, of beetles, of fungi, of plants is just amazing. It's the most diverse place you can think of in this planet. And it is the most productive. It is much more productive than our economy. And the Amazon forest is all circular, and it runs by the energy of the sun and the minerals and nothing else. Now think about a human economy that is like the Amazon forest. And that's what we're doing right now. We're creating a new economy like the Amazon forest, where we bring together trees, where we bring together animals, which are not destroying, which are not consuming, but which are prosuming, which are adding value, coming together in a circular economy where they are minimizing their environmental and social impact to society and to nature and to our planet. So thereby, we are bringing in sustainable companies, sustainable production units, together with people who support them, and are creating a circular economy where their supply chains are deepened and become a whole, just like the Amazon forest. And that's what we're doing at Good for Trust. We have over 200 such companies already together, over 18,000 people who are supporting this. And, you know, slowly, it's developing. We're going to see. Maybe we'll get a forest just in time before the planet gets destroyed. We'll see. We'll see together. At least we're struggling.
And maybe finally, I would like to ask you one last question. What you're doing is actually you're enabling everyone who shops or engages at Good for Trust to be a prosumer. Right. Would you like to explain what a prosumer is?
Well, it's like someone who knows that if you buy something, that you are actually producing something. It's like the demand and supply thing, right? They are together, they are inseparable. So therefore, we call it prosumption, by adding value. But you only become a prosumer if you're actually adding value. That means if you are buying something, spending your money by supporting something that's worthwhile to support. Because everything is a give and take. Or also in the social sciences, there is the notion of reproduction, right? When you are using the same kind of terminology, or you're using a kind of way of discourse in your language, you're reproducing those concepts. Similarly, when you are spending your money, you're reproducing what you are spending your money on, because it's going to be replaced. When you buy it, they're going to produce more. So essentially, knowing that you are an active producer by buying, you become a prosumer. In that sense, be careful where you spend your money, because you might be producing something that might come back like a boomerang and hit you.
Thank you. So maybe, you know, it's a good reminder that every time we make a purchase, we're also making a contribution to the kind of world we would like to see going forward. So Yalın, over to you to bring back together.
Let me take it from here. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Uygar's enthusiasm and excitement was sort of jumping at me from my screen. So I hope you all felt it as well. That was amazing. Thank you, Ergem and Uygar, for this engaging session. And thank you, Uygar, of course, for everything you're doing to tackle the huge climate challenge ahead. Now, I want to bring both Barış and Uygar back on stage for a final round of questioning. I will ask each one a quick question. It's like a face-off, and I will want a very quick answer. So you guys at home, feel free to think about what your answer would be to these questions as well. Feel free to type them in the chat box so others can see your answers. And right, I'm going to fire away. Barış and Uygar, unmute your mics. So we're going to start with Barış. Everyone buckle up. And here we go. What part of the world would you like to visit when the pandemic is over, and why?
Most definitely Australia. It's one of the continents I've never seen, and it's full of crazy animals and birds. Absolutely Australia.
Uygar.
Well, Chile, definitely. I want to go to Patagonia. It's a beautiful place on this planet. Maybe I'll see the condor too, by the way, Barış. I don't know if it's possible. But also because we've started a goodfortrust.org branch in Chile now, of all places.
There you
go. I want to visit the people there.
Excellent. Now, what was the most difficult bird you have seen in the wild, and why was it difficult?
It's got to be the Philippine eagle. Not that it was a big bird, but we went to a plateau and they said, hey, this bird is going to fly somewhere between 8 a.m. and noon, and you quietly have to wait. And I was new to birding, and I hadn't had this patience done, and I was fidgeting after 5 minutes. And just like any Turkish guy would, I was thinking, okay, let's put 2 sticks and do penalty kicks while we wait for the bird to fly. But that was very hard. I learned that in birding, you have to stand still a lot. And that's what made it hard.
We got
it was pure luck, really. I mean, there is a gull called the Sabin's gull. It actually breeds in the Arctic, and it is the furthest place to where I am. And of all places, I was in Amsterdam, just at a conference, and they said, oh my God, a Sabin's gull in the harbor. So I ran there, and then I saw the Sabin's gull. It's a beautiful bird, like a beak, and it's yellow on the tip. It's a gull. You know, there's so many different gulls, by the way, huh? And you know, grayish black hair and a red eye ring all around like this. It's like a tern-like gull. So I would have never seen this bird anyway. I'm not going to go to Spitsbergen or something into the Arctic Circle. Barış might, because he's much more a birder than me. I'm a lazy birder. I only bird watch here. But so I saw it in Amsterdam. Double luck. Why am I in Amsterdam? Why is the Sabin gull in Amsterdam?
Brilliant. By the way, we got a comment saying, I did go to Spitsbergen on the way to the North Pole from Ahmet Uysal. And we all, some of us will remember what he was doing there, which was fascinating. But back to the face-off. Right, now on the other hand, what bird have you not seen in the wild and would love to see, and why? Barış.
That would be the Wilson's bird of paradise. Search it, everybody. Wilson's bird of paradise. It's one of the most magnificent looking birds that has one of the most amazing courtship dances, which means that somewhere in the near future, I got to go to Papua New Guinea again.
Uygar.
Do you know of a bird that doesn't fly? Who knows a bird that doesn't fly? Write it in the chat if you know a bird that doesn't fly.
I think Uygar is going to the Galapagos.
Good. No, it's in New Zealand. It's called the kiwi, their national bird, right? I want to see a kiwi. It's a very hiding sort of bird in the underbush, but a person was doing some research on it, and I had to be on their dissertation committee. So although I had never seen the kiwi, I had never been in New Zealand, I had to be reading a dissertation by a PhD student who was doing research on it, which was the weirdest experience in my life because they were using some obscure method that I'm an expert in, which is called fuzzy cognitive mapping. But yeah, anyway.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now let's broaden it from birds to all animals. There was a question about that. Which animal, any type, non-bird, have you never seen in the wild and would love to see, and why? Barış.
Okay, so there's one animal that's the most successful hunter in the world. Every time it goes hunting, it catches. 100% hit rate every time. And they're called the army ants. Now, I've seen army ants, but I've never seen them when they're marching to hunt. And everybody who's seen them, and guys, write this down. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. When army ants march, they eat everything on their way. If a little cow was tied, they would kill the cow. But because they eat everything, every insect flies away in desperation, which attracts every bird and mammal to catch those insects. So when army ants are on the march, the forest, the jungle comes alive. And apparently it's a spectacular event. I have never seen it. I've seen army ants here and there doing single columns, but I have not seen them on a hunt. And I would love to one day see an army ants on the march.
Uygar.
Oh, wow. I was lost in Barış's story. So I would say a blue whale.
Nice.
Yes, I would like to see a blue whale. I mean, why? Because it's the biggest animal on Earth and it's a mammal. It's like us. It's a mammal. I mean, and it's so big, like imagine of a rat and an elephant, right? There's the elephant and there's the rat. And now imagine a blue whale and an elephant. That's how it is. And I've never seen it. I mean, I really want to see it one day, hopefully. Who knows?
Mind-boggling. Fair enough.
Mind-boggling.
Right. Conservation is already a big part of both of your lives. But what is one new personal behavior you have adopted into your daily lives and routines over the last 12 months? Barış.
Well, I'll give credit to Uygar's dream of being a prosumer. I have a dream to have my house, and I know this is hard to do in cities, but I've planted fruit trees all around my house, and my dream is that my house sustains 2 people. So in my dream, when I'm hungry, I go out and I pick my food, and that's what I eat. That's my dream. So I'm trying to grow my own food as much as I can.
Ergem is smiling. All right, Uygar.
This summer, we actually put solar panels on our roof. So I'm quite happy that we are producing our own energy from our solar panels. And just 2 months ago, we actually got an electric car. So now we are charging our electric car with our own production of solar energy and using that on the street. So I'm like really, really happy I can do that. I feel very privileged, I must say, because not everyone can do this. But it also brings some difficulties. Now that it has a specific range and I have to juggle with it. Being a pioneer is always difficult because now I have to always calculate when I'm going somewhere if I'm going to make it back home or not.
Fair enough. And finally, maybe not quite as elaborate, but tell me one thing our guests can do right away, tonight, today, tomorrow, to help the environment. Barış.
Well, to help the environment, you have to first understand it. So I would say throw yourself into nature. Go into a walk. Get lost. Leave all your cares behind. Don't think about your WhatsApp or social. Just feel the nature, and you will start seeing energy coming into your body from your feet. You will just throw yourself in nature and be part of it.
Uygar.
Become a member of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds or any other civil society organization that is working towards conserving nature, definitely, if you're not one already. And then I'm going to repeat myself, but become a prosumer by voting with your wallet. So, you know, don't vote from election to election, but create your future with buying the right things and only your needs. That
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now I'm going to wrap up because we're getting near the hour. There is one question on the chat about a bird. Maybe Uygar and Barış, you guys can download that and see if you can answer that question. But let me start to wrap up in the interest of time because we have hit the hour. Now I want to thank you guys again, Uygar and Barış. That was fascinating. The presentations were excellent. The thoughts were amazing. And I mean, it was so awesome to see so many of you join us tonight. And a huge thank you to all of you for being with us. We hope you all had a good time and also learned a thing or two from the encyclopedic knowledge of Uygar and Barış and the David Attenborough-like inspiration that the two of them have left with us tonight. Now, this was a free event. But of course, by now you know that there's no such thing as a free Zoom. So as I mentioned right up front, alongside our partners, Sivil Toplum İçin Destek Vakfı and EBRD, we are launching an environmental sustainability fund to help conserve nature and support sustainability efforts in Turkey. The devastating financial impact of the pandemic has made the need even greater, and the urgency around climate change and biodiversity loss is right here, right now. So, if you have been moved by any of the stories and the conservation efforts discussed tonight, or if you have found any of the birds or animals that we talked about fascinating, please support Turkey Mozaik Foundation, and we will ensure your donation will be put to direct use to help support the environment. Now, children, I know you really don't want to be the last generation to see an elephant in the wild. And you know what? All of this is really much more for your generation than for our generation anyway. So please urge your parents to support our cause. Take good care of nature, and nature will take good care of you. Also, don't forget to follow Turkey Mozaik Foundation on social media, like, forward, comment, repost, and spread the word on all of our efforts. And don't forget to plant a tree. Don't forget to download eBird. And on behalf of Ergem and I and the whole Turkey Mozaik Foundation team, a final huge thank you to Barış and Uygar and to all of you. And we very much look forward to seeing all of you on screen or perhaps in person, I dare say, at one of our next events. And children, sorry, but you can now go back to your homework. Good night, everyone, and thank you so much.
Thank you.